Hello and welcome to Dream Life Designer, where I help you reach your goals and make your dreams a reality. I'm Lauren, and by the end of this video, you will learn the power that habits can have in helping you reach your dreams, and a few tips that will help you build those habits into your life. I come out with new videos every week, so be sure to subscribe and click on the bell below so that you are the first to know about them. In my last video, Tips for Starting the New Year Right, I talked a little bit about the importance of not taking on too much at once that requires a lot of willpower. That's the reason a lot of people don't reach their New Year's resolutions and don't stick with them, is because they try to do so many things at once at the start of the year that require a lot of willpower. I mentioned in that last video about the importance of gradually adding those things in and building them into habits before you add on more that requires willpower. That way you can sustain that growth that you want to have and achieve those goals and those resolutions that you set for yourself. In this video, we're going to be diving deeper into this topic. I mentioned in the last video how willpower is a lot like a muscle, that when you are lifting weights, you can't lift a ton of weights all at once. You have to build up to that. And even if you are lifting weights that you are capable of lifting, if you lift a lot, your muscles will eventually fatigue. It's the same thing with willpower and things that require self-control. Psychologists refer to this as willpower depletion. Basically, anything that requires self-control depletes that willpower reserve. So those can be things like making yourself do something you don't feel like doing, resisting a temptation like a sugary food, or smoking. It can be sticking with a difficult task, something that's really challenging and hard for you, and staying with that thing and continuing to work on it. It can also be things like an exam. Exams take a lot of self-control and focus and discipline to stick with, so that's going to lessen your reserve. Also, being polite to people that you don't feel like being polite to. If you're frustrated or angry, but you're holding it together and maintaining your composure, that's using willpower and self-control. As you do each of those things that requires willpower, it lessens your level of willpower, kind of your reserve that you have, so that by the end of the day, if you're trying to not eat sugary sweets anymore, but you've done a lot of things that require willpower, that thing at the end of the day is going to be really hard to resist because you've used up so much of that willpower. So if you have a lot of goals and resolutions you set for yourself, and they all require self-control because they're things you're not used to, they're things that are difficult and challenging, they're things that you don't really feel like doing but you know you should do, it's going to be really hard to continue to do all of those every day, because as your day goes on, you're using up that self-control and it's going down. Researchers have found that people who are successful at achieving a lot of things that can be difficult and can require lots of self-control and willpower, that the people who are successful in accomplishing a lot of these things actually don't build up more self-control and willpower to be able to do more things that take self-control in a day. They actually have strategies that help them avoid needing to use that self-control to accomplish these tasks. So they're using a minimum of self-control. They still have to use it sometimes, but it's not an all day long constantly using it to achieve those tough things to do. So a couple of examples of this can be if someone doesn't want to eat sugary, unhealthy foods, if someone's trying to eat a healthier diet, they make sure they don't have those unhealthy foods around their home. So that, yes, they have to use some self-control when they go shopping for their groceries, that they don't buy those sugary things, but every day when they're at home, they don't have to resist going to the cupboard and getting out that candy bar or that cookie or other unhealthy treat. They just have to resist it maybe once a week when they go shopping rather than constantly every day. So that's one strategy, is like keeping things away, just removing that temptation. Another strategy that some people use are automating things, like for finances, for people who want to save more money. Instead of consciously having to restrict their spending, people have it set up so that when their paycheck's deposited in their bank account, automatically a certain percentage of that is moved over to their savings account that they don't touch. So they don't even have that money available in their checking account anymore to use. So they set up those things that restrict them and make it a little bit easier because they're not facing temptation or they're not having to consciously do those tough things. Another big thing that helps people avoid having to use as much willpower is building habits, which is what the main focus of this video is. It takes willpower at first to build a habit, but once you have a habit built, it's a regular thing that you do, you don't have to use self-control anymore to continue doing it. Just like brushing our teeth, right? Most of us, hopefully, brush our teeth every day, multiple times a day, and it's just a habit. It's just what we do. But little children, a lot of little kids, don't like brushing their teeth. It takes a lot for them. It's a hassle for parents sometimes to get their kids used to brushing their teeth and getting in that habit. But by the time we're adults, it doesn't take self-control. We just do it. That's what part of our routine, part of waking up in the morning, part of getting ready to go to bed. It's that same idea that you are taking things that are difficult and challenging and take willpower, and you're turning them into habits so you don't have to think about it anymore. It's not tough, it's not challenging, it's just what you do. Once you have that habit there, then you can build a different habit for something else that takes willpower, and you have more willpower to spend on other things. Habits reduce the need for self-control and willpower. Basically, they make your action that you want to have, that thing that used to take self-control and willpower, they make it automatic. Once you build it into a habit, it doesn't deplete your willpower anymore, so it's easier for you to do that one, and you have more willpower to spend on other things that you want to do. Building habits is really great for goals that require a long-term investment, that require repeated actions, that there's not an immediate payoff. Those can be a lot more challenging to stick with because you're not getting that reward right away for doing them. So things like wanting to lose weight, exercise more, eat healthy, maybe learning a certain skill, like you're practicing some type of skill like an instrument or a sport, or studying something that you want to become more knowledgeable about. So those types of things are great for building habits. Research has found that easy habits take a minimum of 21 days to build. They can take more than that, but a minimum 21 days. And harder habits, more challenging things to build into a habit, take a minimum of more like 66 days or even more. I mean, it can take many, many months beyond that. Depending on how much willpower it takes for you to do something, the longer it will take to build that habit. But it is possible. Pretty much anything you can build into a habit. So I'm going to share with you some tips to help you with that, on how to successfully build a habit with those things that you want to just get automatic and don't have to worry about willpower anymore for. For the new habit you want to build, tip number 1 is to schedule it into your day or to give it a trigger that is already a habit in your day. For example, if you want to get in the practice of doing yoga, you could schedule yoga every morning from 6 to 7 a.m. That will make it much easier for you to make a habit of it than trying to fit it in here and there throughout the day. Have that consistent time. Or an example of a trigger would be if you want to maybe build your upper body strength and do more push-ups, you could decide every time I brush my teeth in the morning, after brushing my teeth, I'm going to do push-ups. You make it a trigger that I brush my teeth, then I get down on the floor and I do those push-ups. Tip number 2 is to make it consistent. It is much better to practice this new habit every day rather than to do it intermittently. If you only do this new habit once or twice a week, it's going to be hard to build it into a habit because your brain isn't used to it being a regular thing. Or if you do it every day, your brain gets used to that consistency and that's just what you do every day. Now, this doesn't work for everything. For example, exercising, it's important, depending on the type of exercise you do, if it's more intense, it's important to take a day of rest to let your body recover. But if you're doing it every day except for one, or if it's something you do every weekday and you just have weekends off, your brain gets in the habit of this is what we do. So really work hard to make it a daily habit or like a weekday habit that's most days you always do it. And sometimes things pop up, right? And it makes it harder to get something done. But even if you can't spend your full amount of time on it, try to stick with that habit and at least do it a little bit. For example, if we take the yoga example I gave earlier, and you're doing yoga from 6 to 7 every morning, but maybe you have to go into work early for a meeting one morning, so you're not going to have the time. You could get up earlier, but let's say that's not an option for some reason. Instead of doing yoga for an hour, maybe just do it for 15 minutes. Do it from 6 to 6:15, so you still have that habit of doing it every day. So try your best, keep it consistent, don't skip days. If you do skip a day, you can have grace, you can forgive yourself, but really try not to do it because it'll make it so much easier to build that habit. Tip number 3 is to track the new habit that you're trying to build. Track each time that you do it. There are multiple ways you can do this. You can just mark it off on a calendar, like give yourself a star each time. You can have something more dedicated, which oftentimes can be a bit more rewarding to your brain to see your thing that's not a calendar for lots of stuff going on in your life, but just for that habit you're building. One idea that I've heard of is getting sticky notes. Say you're thinking, this habit's probably going to take a month to build. right? Because we said an easier habit's about 20 days, so maybe you'll say, okay, a month will probably be good. This is an easier habit. So you could take 30 sticky notes, little tiny sticky notes, and just put them up on a wall or on a board or on your fridge, wherever you're going to see it, wherever it's going to be rewarding, maybe your mirror in your bathroom, whatever the habit is, do it where it makes sense with that habit you're building. And then you could have each time you do it, you take a sticky note off, or you could do it where you have maybe columns where it's like these are the ones to do and these are the ones you've done. So you move a sticky note over to the done column each time you do it. You could also use a dedicated habit tracker. I've created a few that you can download below. I've created some 30-day trackers and some 60-day trackers. There's a variety of them depending on what your style is, what you'd like to do. You can get those free on a link below and then print them off at home to use for yourself, or you can look for other ones online. There's a lot of different varieties out there of habit trackers. And really, when you're tracking your habit, try to make it fun for yourself. If you want to just be quick and basic, you can mark it off on your calendar, but you might want to incorporate some stickers that you like that are fun stickers, whatever makes you happy and would encourage you to get to put another sticker up. I know it sounds kind of silly and like what they do in elementary school, but it can be encouraging for adults too. So find something that makes you happy. Some of the trackers that I have down there are ones that you color in each day. You color in a number or you color in a picture for each day that you achieve that habit that you're trying to do. So whatever will be most enjoyable for you, what you will find most rewarding, whether it's sticky notes, your calendar, a habit tracker, maybe just a checklist and checking those off, find some way to track that habit, to give yourself that little bit of reward. Because even though it's just simply tracking the days that you did it, your brain can still interpret that as a reward and get a little burst of excitement over each time that you mark off that you achieved that habit for that day. The more fun that you can make your tracking of that habit, the more effective tracking it will be in helping build that habit. Tip number 4 is to start easier and then increase intensity as you go along. Let's take the push-up habit from earlier. If you're trying to build a habit of getting exercise by doing push-ups every day and you're not very strong in your upper body strength, maybe start off with 5 push-ups every day after you brush your teeth, right? And then as it's starting to become a habit, you build on that, and maybe you start at 5 and you build up to 20 and then to 30 and then to 40. Or if it's time, maybe it's exercising. Maybe you want to get some aerobic exercise in. And exercising for a long amount of time sounds really daunting and challenging. So you could start off with 15 minutes. Every day I'm going to exercise for 15 minutes. Then build on to 20 minutes. Then 30 minutes. Then 40 minutes. Build on up to the longer amount of time that you eventually want to reach to. But start building that habit right away, just at a smaller amount. Another example of this would be for writing. If you're trying to write a book, you could start with 100 words a day and then build on up to 1,000 words a day. So just getting started somewhere, making it a habit, doing it every day, having that consistency, but making it easy to start, and then as it starts to become a habit, increase the intensity of it. Tip number 5 is to make your new habit as easy as possible to achieve. So if you're going to exercise first thing in the morning, set out all your exercise clothes the night before so you don't have to think about it in the morning. You just hop out of bed and you put on your exercise clothes. If you're going to start getting up earlier in the morning, put your alarm clock across the room so that you have to get up out of bed and walk over to it to turn it off. You can't just be hitting snooze right next to you. If you want to work for a dedicated amount of time on a certain project you're working on, turn off your phone during that time so you don't get interruptions and things distracting you. Or you can make something more fun by including a friend in it. Listen to music that you love, or to listen to a podcast or an audiobook that you love to listen to. Find some way to make it more fun. With any habit you're trying to build, find ways to make it easier to do, to make it simpler, and to make it more fun. And tip number 6 is to give yourself incentives and rewards when you get started. Because yes, you have that long-term goal, an incentive to lose weight or to become skilled at the piano or whatever it is you're working on, but that's really far away, and it can be helpful sometimes to have some more immediate rewards. So there are a couple ways you can do this. You might be able to give yourself a reward every time you do something. For example, if you want to work out on the treadmill, maybe you have kind of a guilty pleasure show that you like to watch. And that could be your time to watch that show, is when you're working out on the treadmill. So you get that reward of doing something enjoyable while you're building that habit and doing something that takes a bit more willpower and self-control. Or maybe after each time you do something, you give yourself a little piece of dark chocolate. So it's not a lot. You're not having a huge sugary, fatty thing every day that you do something. It's just one little thing that's not too bad. Always make sure whatever reward you're giving yourself is a healthy reward. It's a good thing to be giving yourself, that you're not going to build a bad habit with that reward and then regret later. You can also give yourself bigger rewards for amounts of time that you stick with your habit. For example, you might say after the first 5 days or the first week of doing this habit, I will get this reward. And then after the next 10 days after that, I get this reward. And then when I reach a month, I get this reward. Whatever intervals, it doesn't have to be those intervals, but set times and set rewards that you will get for achieving that goal. That can be really motivating, as long as it's a reward you're really looking forward to, that you don't get to give yourself if you don't get there. It could be something you buy for yourself. It could be something you go out and do, a special treat for yourself. But really think of something that you would find rewarding. And this can work well with your tracking device. If you use a tracker or a calendar or sticky notes, whatever it is, you can put that reward on there so that as you're coloring in or checking it off or moving those sticky notes, you see yourself getting closer and closer to that reward that you've promised yourself. So that can be really motivating. Once it's become more of a habit, you don't need to give yourself those rewards anymore, but you can add in your next habit you're building and put rewards for that habit now that you have already built that one habit. I encourage you today to take a look at your goals that you've set for yourself, what ones are going to take more self-control, and pick one to start with, to start building a habit with. Then use these 6 tips to get going with it. Schedule it or make a trigger for it. Be consistent with it. Track it. You can print off those trackers below or find another way to track it. Start off easier and increase your intensity as you go along. Make it as easy for yourself as possible to get started and to do that habit. And give yourself some rewards when you get started with it to encourage yourself and motivate yourself. And leave a comment below. What habit are you going to start building? Or if you have some other ideas and other tips on how to build habits, go ahead and share those below as well. I would love to hear that. I'd love to hear what you're working on, and I'm sure other people would appreciate that encouragement as well. Thanks so much for watching this video. I hope you found it helpful, and I'll see you next time.